A slow start, but a better finish for the Texans on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Today's pod is all about finishing strong ahead of Houston's last preseason game with a special guest. He's back.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Better Red Nation, from H-Town to your town, from Houston all the way up to Detroit. Today's episode and every episode is for Texan fans all around. I'm your credential media member, John Hickman, Texans football analyst, and today's show is all about how the Houston Texans wrapped up their last joint practice ahead of Saturday's preseason game. But I'm not alone, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching, you already see it. If you're listening, through the audio podcast, then you'll know right now. 3, 2, 1. Coty Davis is back.
Yeah, what's good, my guy?
It's one of those moments where we've been discussing for a long time, just getting him back on the pod, and what better opportunity, what better way to get him back on the pod than to discuss what happened up in Detroit as he's covering the Detroit Pistons. He is around football still, so he'll give us his overall thoughts from the joint practice, defensive day, and the standouts as well on the defensive side of the ball. And I think from our reports that we've seen everywhere, Kalen Bullock and Derek Stingley, man, they're going to continue to have their hand in the cookie jar, right? But we'll open up today's show just looking at what was a slow start for the offense, but a better finish for Houston, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and the guys. Coty, as you out there in Detroit, as you've been the last 365 days.
Literally.
First and foremost, man, welcome back to the show that you helped create the foundation for. A lot of people have been asking about you. Welcome back, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Look, first and foremost, John, listeners and viewers, hey, this was one of my most excited times to jump on the show. We going to get into training camp, but really quick, I did my notes, sent over a couple of videos, and I text John, hey, I'm setting up, and that's when it hit me. I'm making my return to Locked On Texans. Only for a day, though. Only for a day. John, my brother, you doing awesome work over here, man. Even though I've been gone for literally 365 days, I believe Monday made a full year since I made my full transition out here to Detroit. Man, you doing a good job on the show. All of our colleagues out there in Houston doing a good job, man. I still follow the Texans. By the way, I think I follow the Texans more so than my beloved Saints. Let me just say that. But look, overall, man, it was a day I really felt like I was back at home on the beat of the Houston Texans, even if it was for a day. John, if you allow me to do so, I want to jump right into it. Yes, the offense did have a slow day. However, they got things going. And once they got things going, that's when we really saw that ball moving. And first and foremost, let me just say this. Going into this joint practice against the Lions, man, I was more intrigued on how this offensive line is going to look. Because even though I'm all the way up in Detroit, once again, I still got my eyes, I still got my ears down to the ground on what's going on in Houston. And everyone knows that going into the season, the production of the offensive line is going to be one of, if not the most important attribute for the success of the Houston Texans in 2025. And ladies and gentlemen, look, I am happy to say that I was thoroughly impressed by the way the offensive line looked, especially considering that a guy by the name of Tytus Howard is back at right tackle due to an injury. Correct me if I'm wrong. Cam Robinson, sorry. Because I have been praying that he gets an opportunity to go back to his natural position. Yes, I understand this is a guy who can play almost anywhere on the offensive line for the umpteenth time. Tytus Howard is a right tackle, and he showed why during the joint practice against the Detroit Lions, a Detroit Lions team who's definitely going to be top 5 in defense, a Detroit Lions team who literally have arguably, if not their best defensive lineman, and Aidan Hutchinson back on the field after he went down with a devastating leg injury. Look, I was also at Lions practice on Tuesday. Hutchinson already looked like he's in midseason form, and Tytus Howard looked really good winning his one-on-one battle against Hutchinson. And let me just say this, don't take it from me, you can also hear what Nico Collins had to say as well.
With our offensive line, I think they handled the front really well. Aidan's such a great player. You talk about explosive, dynamic. For me to see him work back and be out here from what he went through, as tough an injury as he had to go through, it's really cool to see him back out working, and it's still he's still bringing it on the edge. I thought Tytus did a really nice job today. And of course, Aidan got him a couple times. Tytus got him a couple times. But that's two pros working together. That's football, and I'm pleased with what Tytus did today.
I was also pleased with that whole offensive line. Yes, there was a moment where the Lions' defensive front did get after the Houston Texans and did make it a little bit hard at times for the quarterback. But that offensive line did a solid job for the most part, keeping that pocket clean. John, I was very impressed by what I saw out of rookie wide receiver Jaylin Noel. I love that young man. I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
He's going to be Houston's. He's going to be the guy that when you look up and you see a 30-yard play down the field, at some point during the season, we may start to look up and see his name called a little bit more often for those explosive plays down the field, whether he's getting them simply by taking a 5-yard catch and turning it into 30, or whether he's just blazing somebody down the field and he's wide open. That was probably his biggest attribute coming out of Iowa State, his ability to get open in that 4.3 speed, which is something the Houston Texans hadn't had in terms of a faster guy in a long time. So tell us about the rookie, and also like with the slow start that they had in Detroit, got a little bit hotter towards the end because, 12 out there.
Boy. First of all, let me just say, look, for Jaylin, he is definitely going to be a guy, as you just alluded to. He's going to have an opportunity to make explosive plays for this team. As a matter of fact, he was one of a handful of players who had an opportunity to make their way into the end zone, caught a touchdown pass during team scrimmage. I believe that touchdown pass did come from Davis Mills, who's, by the way, Davis Mills looked, I'm not going to say he looked better. He just looked more confident.
This is for the Mills Mafia out there.
Yes, sir. We got to bring
Coty was captain of the Mills Mafia.
Man, I was president. I was a president for a lot of things that didn't work out in my favor, and I'm sorry about that, Texans fan. But overall, man, I love what I saw out of Jaylin Noel. But however, as everybody know right now, John, you alluded to it. I alluded to it. This offense started slow, but midway through practice, they got things going. And why did they get things going? Nico Collins. Early on, I believe this was the first series that they had, first, maybe second. Collins had missed a pass opportunity from CJ Stroud, and Terrion Owner, the Lions' second-year cornerback, had a great defensive stop. Talk some noise to Nico. Next thing I know, Nico Collins ran off about 5 to 6 catches. And once he got going, that's when this Houston Texans offense really got going. And look, I understand that I was away from Nico for about a year, but I think I can say I've been around him long enough to say something is different about Nico this year. And I had an opportunity to ask Coach D'Amico Ryans about the growth that he has seen from Nico since he became head coach in 2023, and this is what he had to say.
Nico has grown the most to me in these first 3 years is just the confidence. Right? Every time I see Nico, I'm saying, hey, what's up, playmaker? Like, you are a big-time playmaker. Walk that way. And he's done that. He shows up that way on the field anytime, we need a play. We know it, and I think the opponent knows it. That's where the ball is going. And with everybody knowing, he still shows up and makes big-time plays in any critical moment that you need him to. So that's one thing I've seen is just that confidence is exactly where it needs to be for Nico.
That's what you love to hear. That's what you love to hear.
Exactly. And he said two important things that I love, man, the confidence and the playmaker. You know me, John, ever since Nico was drafted by the Texans in 2021, I always knew that he was going to be a playmaker for this team. And we saw it, especially over the last 2 seasons when he had an opportunity to record over 1,000 receiving yards. Last year definitely would have been better if he didn't go down with that hamstring injury. Look, it goes without saying, if Nico Collins is healthy, I think we're going to see him take another step forward in terms of not just for being the playmaker for this team, but literally being one of the top 3, top 5 wide receivers in the league, period. And I know that is a strong statement to say, especially considering what we saw the defense struggle with, or we're going to get into that a little bit on the next segment, because Amon St. Brown and Jameson Williams, oh my God, that's 2 duos right there. No team want no issue with. But the way Nico Collins is moving, the way that you can see him not just moving on the field, but his attributes, the way he's more confident. I know that's part of the reason why Coach DeMeco Ryans wanted to point that out, is because, look, for Nico Collins, when he first got here, it always seemed like he wanted to take a step back, especially when he was a young buck trying to learn from guys like Brandon Cooks. But I never forget this, John. It was his rookie season. I was at his locker, and I asked him, what does success for him look like when he looked back at his career, let's say 10 years in Houston? And this young man said he want his name to be alongside Andre Johnson and D-Hop. So you know what that means. He got his eyes set on, man. And I think this year, if Nico Collins stay healthy, man, we're definitely going to see him and his team on the offensive side of the ball take a huge leap forward.
Now, that's the offensive side of the ball. Coty did a very good job of breaking down a little bit of the highs and the lows, but we got into the highs on the defensive side of the ball. There was also some highs and lows. Derek Stingley doing Derek Stingley type of things. Caleb Bullock doing Caleb Bullock type of things. But we'll dive into whether or not he felt as though the Houston Texans may need to find another player to fill a void or not. More Locked On Texans on the way. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. I'm excited for Sunday. Why? Well, because the Locked On Swarm League, part 1 and 2, will be going down this Sunday, right? A group of us will be meeting up at a location to just have some fun while we go through the draft and do it together. And the draft will be hosted on Yahoo Fantasy Sports. It's going to be fun. But to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private or public leagues. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Offensively, the Houston Texans had a good day to close out the joint practice, which is very important. They got a game on Saturday. This game, the third preseason game, will be very important for some guys that are fighting for a roster spot, specifically when you look at the depth in that DB room. C.J. Gardner-Johnson will not be starting off the year. As we know, he's rehabbing from a lower leg injury, right? There's a lot going on with Jimmy Ward at this time legally that we won't get into, but you got guys like Tremont Smith, you got Miles Bryant, you got Russ Yeast, you got a few of those guys, MJ Stewart, who I think is a lot to make this roster. MJ has played some good football for the Houston Texans. Damon Arnett, Arthur Millette. You got a few of those guys in their DB room that really need this opportunity Saturday to prove that they are either good enough for the Houston Texans, but also to prove if they're good enough for the NFL, any other of the other 31 teams in the NFL. Coty, from your eyes, and there's 4 of them, bring to us and the listeners and viewers, what did you see from the defensive side of the ball?
They might need some help with their depth unit, more so their secondary. And John, you just alluded to it. I'm not about to go into it. We know that the secondary is a little bit banged up because outside of Caleb Bullock and Derek Stingley Jr., there was some questionable plays being made. And I don't know if it was because if they needed depth or, like I just mentioned in the first segment, you're playing against arguably the top 1A, 2A wide receiving core in Amar St. Brown and Jamison Williams. And look, being out here in Detroit, if Williams is able to stay out of trouble, you're looking at a situation where he's going to take another step forward in his career. But
he reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson. Like you may not get a lot
maybe
in terms of route tree, but if you need to play 15 or more yards down the field, Jamison, just go run, and he can make a play for you.
And there were so many times where they took the top off the defense so much. But once again, John, I'm wondering whether or not if those moments happen because the Texans, they just missing like some really important guys in their secondary right now, especially CJ Gardner-Johnson once he gets an opportunity to return. But my favorite thing on defense, man, and this is something that I really wanted to look into, was just how did the front seven look? First and foremost, guess who I saw for the first time since January 20th, 2024?
Who did you see?
Christian Harris. And I want to tell you something. That day was when the Texans lost, when the Texans was eliminated by the Baltimore Ravens in the second round during I think that was his second season, if I'm not mistaken.
His second season. That was the D'Amico and CJ
Stroud first season. Yeah, so that was the last time I saw Christian Harris. And let me tell you something. Christian Harris, even though I know he's been gone for a long time, Harris looks really good. And when you
that's what the listeners want.
Exactly. And I was more impressed. This is the reason why I was impressed by what this front seven looked like. Azeez Elshire was not at practice. Don't know why he was out, but he was not at practice today. But this front seven looked like they did not miss a beat, especially considering the fact that the Lions' rushing attack, they really didn't do that much of a good job running the ball against Houston front seven. Look, it's joint practice. Yeah, there was moments where they had an opportunity to break free, but overall, the Texans front four, the Texans front seven did a tremendous job containing this rushing attack. And you guys who love football, you guys who literally follow all 32 teams know how dangerous the Lions are on the offensive side of the ball with their rushing attack. And I'm standing there and I'm looking at someone like a David Montgomery. I want to say he probably broke free maybe one time. So you look at that and I'm thinking to myself, man, if they look like this now, can you imagine what this front seven is going to look like when you have somebody like Azeez Elshire come in? Henry To'oTo'o is another guy who I've been around majority of his time in his career. And just like what I said about Nico Collins, he looks different. And what I mean by he looks different, he looks a lot smarter. I remember his rookie season, when whether it was joint practice, whether it was preseason, or whether it was during the regular season, remember he took some time to get going. There was moments where it looked like he was just, let's just say, anxious to make a play. Now I'm looking at him and it seemed like he's taking his time before he make his first step. Look like he's taking a lot of time to process stuff. And he did a very good job getting a handful of defensive stop. And of course, look, when you talk about the front seven, when you talk about the edge, Will Anderson Jr.
Can I? Because like this season, there's a lot riding on this season, and you know that, right? Like similar to the Detroit Lions, they lose Ben Johnson, they lose some guys, but you look at them as a team that's retooled, and maybe they can make a real push at it, right? For the Houston Texans, they lose some guys, but this is still a team that at the very least should be able to kind of run through their division here in the AFC South. So we know about the studs. We know about Will Anderson. We know about Danielle Hunter, who was just voted a top 40 player in the NFL by his peers. I want to ask you about some of the guys that are not necessarily household names. Specifically, you mentioned not being able to stop the run. I mean, not being able to run against the Houston Texans. Guys like Tommy T, guys like Sheldon Rankins, the guys like Tim Settle, those inside guys. How was their performance during joint practice?
It was good. Once again, and look, I know I'm highlighting a lot of guys who, as you just alluded to, are household names. However, it was literally the whole entire unit. I mean, there was moments where a guy, Sheldon Rankins, my guy, I didn't get an opportunity to catch up with him, but Sheldon Rankins is one of those guys where if you compare the Texans front four last year to what it looked like at joint practice, you can definitely tell a difference because this is a guy who excelled in the run stopping. Same thing with forgive me, John. Fatukausi, Folu Fatukausi.
Foley. Yes, sir. Big Foley.
You should be proud of me. Even he had an opportunity to go out there and make some plays. Like overall, whether if it was the starters, whether if it was the bench unit, a lot of those guys in that front seven looked extremely well. And I think with cut down day coming up with this last preseason game on Saturday, I really think that Coach Nico Collins and his staff is going to have a hard time trying to decide not only which one of those guys are going to make the 53-man roster, but which one of those guys are going to be part of your main rotation, which one of those guys are going to be part of your practice squad, which one of those guys you're going to just have to say, you know what, unfortunately we don't just have enough room here for you in Houston. However, you put enough good tape to go out there and get another job across the league somewhere. Look, there was a lot of great guys out there on the front seven. However, John, listening to viewers, once again, the only concern I have about this team is the depth in the second unit. I think the only guy that really caught my eye in his second unit in terms of the depth is a guy that I still don't understand how he has a job here in Houston from time to time, and that's MJ Stewart. He had an opportunity to get a couple pass deflections. He had got a really good stop when the Lions and Texans was going through their red zone drills, man. He looked really good. If he suits up on Saturday, I'm pretty sure he's going to show me why he still has a job here in the city of Houston. But overall, man, outside of the depth in that secondary, it was a pretty cool day for the Houston Texans defense as a whole.
You know what? When I look at this defense on the inside, I look at Tommy T. You know what plays in his favor, in my opinion? The rest of those guys are of age and have been in the NFL for a while. Tommy T is only 25 years old. Only 3 seasons under his belt. So I kind of look at him the same way I looked at Khalil Davis in the sense of, what do we call D'Amico Ryans?
Khalil Davis, developmental coach.
That DC. So I look at Tommy T last year in 2024 in 8 games. Only in 8 games for the Houston Texans. 28 total tackles, career high. A sack and a half, career high. So career highs his first year with D'Amico Ryans, Matt Berg, Raw Wright, who is the defensive line coach. I think he's going to be a lock to make this roster, and I can really see Houston moving on from one of those vet guys on the defensive side of the ball, specifically the inside vet guy. I don't want to put a name out there yet, but time will tell, because if we see one of those guys playing in that fourth quarter, then what we know, they did it with Desmond King, they did it with John Mechie recently. If they're in their fourth quarter, thank you for your services, but they decided to move on. Now, to close out the show, we'll dive into just your overall thoughts from joint practice. That was something that I wanted to ask you about. So, Locked On Texan fans, listeners, and viewers, don't go nowhere. It's the Coty Davis Show here on the Locked On Texan podcast. But Texan fans, this episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. It's easy to fit into your schedule. Just click to connect, and you can even switch therapists anytime if you need to. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. NFL fantasy draft season is here. So for your sake of listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast with hosts Vinny Iyer and Michelle Madju. Listen every day to prep your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Coty M. Davis is back in the building here with the Locked On Texas podcast, a show that he helped build from ground up in 2018. Now my boy is a part of a franchise that was the first time in some seasons they made it to the playoffs because of an all-star in Cade Cunningham. So and then you look at the Rockets, when he leaves, the Rockets do well. So
No,
a part of me is happy he's gone.
Well. They ain't just do well. They got a guy by the name of Kevin Durant that, hey, wow. That's all I gotta say.
If we're talking NBA, I'm happy that he's gone. He knows that. But if we're talking NFL, we're talking Texans, I wish my brother was still here with me. However, Texan fans want to know, as you talked about the Detroit Lions not being able to run on the Texans, no Joe Mixon to start the season is looking like. A lot of up and down conversations and, what's going to happen with the running back room. I've been told that keep an eye out on Houston, trying to make a move at the running back position. We know next week on the 26th or the 27th, we're going to see a bunch of players released. Were the Houston Texans successful on the ground against the Detroit Lions?
Yes.
That's good news. Nick
Chubb. I'm glad we're talking about this because I wanted to cover it when we was talking about the offense. But Nick Chubb, look, if the Texans have to, and at this point it seems like it, don't quote me on this, John, listeners and viewers, but it seems like the Texans might have to start the season without Joe Mixon. If that's the case, they definitely have a great contingency plan with Nick Chubb. The way he's able to run the ball, and he had an opportunity to run the ball against a Detroit Lions team who I just said in the first segment, you're looking at one of the top defensive teams in the league. And not only that, it wasn't just him, it also goes hand in hand with how well and how productive this offensive line looked by creating gaps. There were several moments where Nick Chubb had an opportunity to create a first down during their team scrimmage. It looked like he created more than the first time that time. And it wasn't just him, it was also Gerald Jordan. And I'm really intrigued by what they're going to do with Gerald Jordan. He had an opportunity to go out there and make play both in the rushing attack and in the passing attack as well. And it gave me confidence to say, you know what? If you're looking at a situation where they're going to be without Joe Mixon, they definitely have a pretty solid contingency plan. However, John, I also saw Dameon Pierce.
Okay, that's next.
Look, I saw Dameon Pierce, and look, he looks solid, I must say.
That's good news.
Look, I don't know what's going on with Dameon Pierce. I've been texting you for the longest, like, what is going on with that? I don't know what's going on with him. I'm not in the building no more. However, I was glad to see him go out there and contribute at some point. He did have an opportunity to record a rushing touchdown, but I believe it was doing their red zone drill. And not only that, I did see him continue to get work with the special team as well. So for one reason or another, it seems like at the time of this recording that the Texans do have some type of plan for Dameon Pierce. But John, at the same time, I would not be surprised if the Texans do explore the market to see if they can bring in another running back. But if they don't, that means two things are in their favor. They are confident in someone like a Nick Chubb, even a Gerald Jordan, and that also would mean,
don't forget the rookie Woody Marks.
I didn't get an opportunity to see him too much. I would say maybe because both teams were playing like on two fields, so maybe he had an opportunity to get a couple snaps when I was paying attention to the defense. As you guys know, you all been in training camp. There's a lot that be going on that you got to pay attention to. I didn't get an opportunity to see him too much, but look, put it like this. From what I saw today, I would much rather see D'Amico and his staff put more emphasis in trying to upgrade their depth at the secondary unit versus trying to upgrade what they already have in their running back unit. For what I've seen only from today, I was thoroughly impressed and saying, you know what? I think they'll be okay given whether or not they're going to have to play some time without Joe Mixon.
And I did some sniffing around, man. It does seem like the two positions that we will see Houston possibly upgrade as of right now: running back, secondary safety help.
Yeah, because I think
that's what I found out today.
I think your boy might be done.
Who is that? Oh man. So we got to look at. I want to ask you this question, which I think is very important. We saw this team over the last two seasons lose games that they shouldn't have lost. Ain't no way to sugarcoat it, right? But to see this team before we close out have a day that they had against the Detroit Lions, a team that has been widely regarded as one of the better teams in NFC and in the NFL overall, as someone that covered this team for so many years, what do you think? Like, what message would you give to Texas fans for you to come back on this show and say, hey, you know what? The team I saw today is a different team than what I saw 2 years ago, even last year. This is a totally different team and how they competed against one of the league's best teams, who they played last season and lost to after 5 interceptions, which is still crazy.
Yeah, which, by the way, they embarrassed me really bad because I went to a watch party out here in Detroit and I was dressed in my Texans gear. And
I don't know why you did that.
Yeah, hey, it was looking good in the first half. Let's just say that. But, that game right there is a prime example of what you just finished talking about. Them losing games that they should not have lost. And for me, when I compare this version of the Texans teams that I saw just for today versus what I covered over the last 2 years per se, I would say this team, from today, they learned from their mistake, and I think we're going to see a more mature team because even though last year, remember I was still on the beat, around this time last year or whatever, because I did majority of all the training camp. Even though there was a lot of hype surrounding, this Texans team last year, and it was like, oh my God, you got Stephon, you got this, you got that, and all this other, Bobby Sloyd and stuff. I think this team really didn't have an opportunity to really not only grow, but apply lessons learned. And even though there was a lot of excitement for this team, I think a lot of us, even including myself at times, forgot that this was still a young team. I mean, CJ Stroud was just in his second year as, a franchise quarterback. Nico Collins was coming into a season where he's undoubtedly wide receiver number one. And I think from what I was able to see throughout the season, and looking at their struggles when they had mistakes against the Lions in the regular season last year and other games where it's like, damn, how the hell did they lose this game? It just seems like they was just a little bit too young. Now this year, they just look more mature. I mean, I mentioned it in the second segment. I mentioned it in the second segment when I take a look at somebody like a Henry T. There was moments where it seemed like he was just processing things a lot better before he made his first start. Same thing with Nico Collins. I mean, Nico Collins understands that not only do he understand that he's going to be wide receiver number one, but he knows how to handle certain coverages once things are changing. Same thing with CJ Stroud. I mean, CJ Stroud had a pretty solid day. I mean, he did end the day throwing 2 interceptions, I believe. But him and Davis Mills, even when they made a mistake, whether they overthrew somebody, whether they threw an interception or whatever the case might be, it seems like they kept their composure a lot better. This team, even the coaching staff alone, this team seems a lot more mature and a lot smarter to where if things do not go the right way, they're not going to get rattled. Like, I think that's what happened to this team last year. Look, they human. They probably bought into the hype a little bit. And when things did not go their way, we just saw them unravel. Like, I don't think we're going to see that version of the Houston Texans this year. And look, outside of the offensive line, just having another year of preparation. And once again, it's not just the players, but the coaching staff itself. I mean, I think we're going to see a better version of D'Amico Ryans going out there and calling better plays. Just everybody across the board. Even Nick Kelly, even though this is his first year calling plays, I think he's really taking the time to really study and see what he's going to have an opportunity to do to make sure that this offense could get this ball moving down the field. Because John, you said it on the show, and I'm going to repeat it. I think last year, not only did they buy into the hype, but it seemed like this team did not evolve. And I remember I think it was maybe the first week of training camp. You said it on the show because I still listen to you. You said what caught your eyes when Coach D'Amico Ryan said it's not copy and paste. And this year is definitely not copy and paste on both sides of the ball.
Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, the Coty edition, the joint practice with Coty edition. I'm super excited for you guys to listen to it. And I'm just excited to have my brother back. But I'm John_Hickman12. That's where you can follow me on Twitter. You know what, Coty, where can they find you and all of your great work and everything you do for the Detroit Pistons, Detroit news altogether?
Yes, sir. You can follow me on all your social media platforms at Coty Davis _24. Once again, it's Coty, COTY DAVIS _24. Why 24? Because Kobe Bryant is the GOAT.
That's right. And make sure that you follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time, ladies and gents, and Texan fans from H-Town to Detroit, no matter where you are, peace.